for coming. Thank the sheriff, my moderator, Kathy Adams, moderator Joe Flint. Let me give a little quick update on stuff. Everybody's here now, so I don't have to make that spiel. But we need all cameras on silent, no talking, no applauding, because we're going live and it's going to be on TV also. Any questions that you have, you can get it to the lady, Mrs. Port. She'll pick them up. First of all, I want to thank the man of this house for giving me the opportunity to be in his house. And when I'm in another man's house, I respect the man of his house. And so he's the pastor of this house. I want to thank you guys for coming, the candidates and all. So now I'm going to turn it over to the moderator, Kathy and Joe Flynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chatman. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Adams, and I will serve as one of your moderators for this evening. And I'd like to say welcome. Welcome to not only the candidates, but welcome to our in-person audience as well as our listening virtual audience. We have all of the candidates that are running for the Fulton County Sheriff, that seat, in attendance this evening. So with that, we will have a great candidates forum. Each of the candidates has been invited and they have shown up, so thank you. What I'd like to do is briefly go over the housekeeping rules, the housekeeping and the rules for the forum for this evening. Each of the candidates will be given 1.5 minutes for their opening statements. The candidates will be given 2 minutes for their closing statement. They will be given 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. The moderator will call on the candidate in the order that he or she chooses. All of the candidates will receive the same number of questions, but you may not receive the same question. So with that, we'd like to ask that you pay close attention to the questions. As far as timekeeping, the clock is here and is set on the allocated amount of time. Should you run over your time, you will be asked to stop. And is that clear? I think that's fair to everyone. So do remember that all questions will not be the same, but they will have the same number of questions. We ask that our live audience do submit your questions via index card and that our online audience submit your questions via chat. We will receive those questions and we'll ask those questions of our candidates. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Pastor Joe, and he will take us through the next step.
Thank you so very much, Kathy. Thank you all for joining us here this evening for the Sheriff of Fulton County Candidates Forum. Again, welcome to all the sheriff candidates. Thank you all for coming, as been said. In this year's election, ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 candidates that have qualified to run for this seat. All of the candidates have been invited to participate in this evening's forum, and as you can see, all of the candidates are here. Each candidate will share information with you about themselves as to why they are the better candidate for the position to represent the residents of Fulton County. Each of the candidates is seeking to govern, create policy, manage budgets, and be a visionary, creating long-term plans and sustainable growth. More so, lead with tact and diplomacy. Again, as been mentioned, the timekeeper will sound the bell when it is time to end for each statement if the candidate goes beyond the time allotted. They will be interrupted by myself or Kathy. Tonight, we are presenting information to the voters in a fair, nonpartisan setting. So without further ado, let's get the forum started and hear from the candidates. Now I will turn the floor back over to our candidates so that we can introduce them first in alphabetical order by last names. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to share their opening statement. I want to reiterate, candidates, 1.5 seconds to share your opening statement. And out of courtesy and out of just normal decorum, we will acknowledge the current sheriff, Patrick Labat, first. Following that, we have Mr. Kirt Beasley, Ms. Kirt Beasley here. My apologies. We have James J.T. Brown, Joyce Former, and Charles Rambo. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get the show on the road.
Sheriff, if you will, please open us up with your opening statement.
First of all, good evening. My name is Patrick Labat, and I am the 28th Sheriff of Fulton County. I'm certainly humbled to be the Fulton County Sheriff. It is an opportunity for us to really continue a legacy of long standing within our county. Ultimately, the Fulton County Sheriff, as you know, out of 159 sheriffs, is considered the high sheriff. The Fulton County Sheriff's Office is the largest in the Southeast, and we represent 15 municipalities in and throughout Fulton County. We are in a circumstance where previous administrations, decades long of really understanding or not understanding what the sheriff's office looked like, really focusing now on our 3 constitutional responsibilities, being the chief law enforcement, focusing on our jail, and certainly protecting the courts. These systems failed long before I became sheriff. And as such, one of the highlights here, we took over in the height of COVID, where there were 3,700 individuals that looked like us that were on the floor or in the jail, and 600 of them sleeping on the floor. Now, we've worked with our justice partners. We've created an environment, an inmate advocacy unit where we have now 2,800 individuals, nobody sleeping on the floor, really creating an environment that is humane and focusing on what our sheriff's office is supposed to do, be the chief law enforcement officer in the county.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we'll move into the next candidate. That's Kirt Beasley, and these are in alphabetical order by last name. Ms. Beasley.
Good evening. Thank you all for having us on today. I am Kirt Beasley, the best candidate for Sheriff of Fulton County. I come to you all with more than 24 years of service. I retired as a lieutenant colonel, part of the executive command staff with the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. My career began in 1994. It concluded in 2017. And along the way, I gained a wealth of knowledge, which I will demonstrate once I am elected sheriff of Fulton County. I am a successful business owner. I have worked with the justice departments. I've worked with law enforcement divisions. I have worked with stakeholders in reducing jail population, reducing crime, bringing awareness to mental illness, as well as a lot of other things that I've done. So I am here today to become your next sheriff of Fulton County. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Mr. Brown.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me. I am James J.T. Brown, and the Lord is my helper in the name of Jesus. I served in the Fulton County Sheriff's Office for 30 years. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, a graduate of Morehouse College. I have a master's degree, and I went on to do a doctoral program. While I was with the Sheriff's Office, I worked in all 3 major divisions, the court division, the jail division, and the law enforcement division. And in those divisions, especially the law enforcement division, I worked in warrants. And I said, my help is from the Lord, because every night I went out there to execute a warrant, we asked at my precinct for the Lord to guide us and to keep us safe, not only from harm, but for the detainees who were going to apprehend also. Also, I got shot at it many times, and of course, the Lord helped us through those situations. Let me tell you, right now, the Fulton County Sheriff's Office is in spiritual crisis, and it's going to be up to me to bridge the gap between the detainees and the Sheriff's Office. I am James J.T. Brown. Please vote for me so I can be a transformational leader and bring the Fulton County Sheriff's Office back to standards.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. So next we will hear from our next candidate, Ms. Joyce Farmer.
Good evening. I am Joyce Farmer, and I am ready to serve as your next sheriff. I have over 34 years of law enforcement experience. I retired from the sheriff's office after serving 30 years. I am now currently working with the East Point Police Department, and I am running for sheriff because now our sheriff's office is struggling. The spending is out of control. The morale is at an all-time low. Inmates are losing their lives due to neglect and mismanagement. We're losing officers faster than we can fill the vacancies. Everybody's talking about we need a new jail. What we need first is a new sheriff. We can get that new sheriff quicker than we can a new jail.
and I'm here and ready to serve. Thank you.
And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, we will have Mr. Charles Rambo, certainly not least.
Well, thank you. My name is Charles D. Rambo. I am your write-in candidate for Fulton County Sheriff. Would you believe that in this early voting period, yes, my name does not appear on the primary ballot, but I have received tons of emails of people saying, man, I was looking for your name on the ballot. I said, no, my race doesn't come up until November. So really it's between one of these four fine persons that will face me November 5th. I'm here just to raise the narrative of this race. I didn't participate in the last debate that took place on this past Sunday, but when the teacher is away, his students seem to know how to take heed and pay attention to the message, because I heard my campaign talk points come up so many times during that forum. So even though I was not invited, God began to speak through each one of them, repeating the very things that I'm going to introduce tonight to you in the Constitutional Sheriff Initiative. Reform in 365 days of taking office. That's the mark of real leadership, is when you know how to write the plan and get people to follow it. That's what I represent tonight, and I'm thankful to you, the citizens of South Fulton, who rely upon informed events like this and not low information politics or your elected leaders to try to drag on the narrative of how you should vote. Thank you, and I hope that you'll pay close attention tonight.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Rambo. Thank you all candidates for your introductions at this time. We'll now begin the questions.
So the first question is for Ms. Beasley. Please share an example of your experience in managing an operating budget of nearly $150 million.
My experience in operating and managing a $150 million budget comes from being second in command at the Fulton County Jail, where I was responsible for ensuring that we do not run out of money before the next fiscal period. So we had to manage the food budget. We had to place orders for furniture and the needs for the admin areas, and the food budget, the medical budget. I'm trying to think of all the things that I managed. The food contract, the medical budget, and the operational needs and things needed for the jail, as well as the personnel budget was included in there. So those are the things that I operated within that budget.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Mr. Rambo. Please share an example of your experience with providing security to the courts and the Superior Court, and how have you been able to manage that?
Yes, thank you for that. In all transparency, I have never actually worked inside of a courtroom. I was placed there on transfer after running for sheriff the first time, and essentially was sent back to the jail because that's where the greater need was for real leadership to come in. However, the courthouse shooting of 2005 dragged me back into, I don't want to say the spotlight, because that was not a spotlight I necessarily wanted to be in, but they began to turn towards me because I actually had predicted that we were going to have a situation like that in the race, that 2004 race. With that, I was able to provide some key points for the courthouse committee that were taken into consideration, in addition to from Geraldo Rivera all the way to MSNBC. Everyone was calling upon me to provide a voice of competence that could actually help see that situation through. In fact, at that portion in time, the late, great Dr. Reverend Joseph Lowry invited me to the People's Agenda and called me a point of light for helping to guide through that situation. It's on the record. It's something that you can go and check. So again, in transparency, I never worked inside the courthouse, actually, but I did provide leadership at a time in crisis when it needed the most.
Thank you kindly for your transparency, sir.
Thank you. The next question will go to Sheriff Labat. There have been a number of proposals for building a new jail. If you move forward, where do you plan to acquire the funds for the nearly $2 billion price tag?
So first of all, thank you. The jail, and let's get rid of the myths, the jail has been approved by the Board of Commissioners. The funding piece will come from the Board of Commissioners suggested. Right now, there are three opportunities on the table. A public-private partnership, either raising taxes and or creating some kind of bond for the actual jail process. This week or next week, you will see presented to the board, not from the sheriff's office, because it's not the sheriff's office responsibility, a proposal, a request for proposal to build a facility. That facility in and of itself is a replacement facility. Our facility is decades old. It has outlived its life cycle. As such, the Board of Commissioners commissioned a $1.2 million jail feasibility study that showed that 80% of the jail itself was out of life cycle. In fact, the study showed that it would cost us more, over $2 billion, to build or rebuild a facility and rehab that entire facility. Right now, the exact total is $1.7 billion. Those are the three funding mechanisms. And with a jail that is deserved of its reputation in terms of how we treat the least of these, it also has 400 beds that are designed for mental health and focusing on how we treat our employees better, as well as creating an environment where the least of these are serviced much better, with no one sleeping on the floor.
Thank you so much, Sheriff Labat. This question is for Ms. Former. Ms. Former, how do you plan to handle internal investigations and potential corruption?
That's a great question. My plan to do internal investigation is starting with myself. I will ensure that I will be held accountable for any actions that any of the officers do. I will also implement a team as within the community to come in to oversee, so that way it will be the transparency other than just having officers within the department. So I will implement individuals from the community to come in to build a team that will come in and do investigation, even though it will be an officer overseeing, but to actually do the investigation, it will be someone not within the agency.
Thank you kindly.
So next question, and this question will be for Mr. Brown. In 2023, there were 10 inmates who died in custody in the Fulton County Jail, 15 deaths in 2022. What attributes do you have, or what kind of leadership will you provide to help offset some of those numbers?
That's a good question, because like you stated, in 2021, there was 1 death. 2022, there were 14 deaths. 2023, there were 10 deaths. And as of now, 2024, there's been 3 deaths. So I will implement policy and procedure and training to my staff to make them accountable. I would start off with the line supervisor, which is a sergeant. Then I would go up to management, which is the lieutenant, and make sure that he holds all the deputies accountable on the floor. I would have written policy and procedure for the deputies that adhere to, that they can do their rounds, 30-minute rounds, and also to ensure the safety of everybody on the floor from contraband. I would come in with a task force that would do a shakedown every 2 days to make sure that no shanks or any contraband is in the facility. So we're going to start with training and accountability for management and personnel. So that's where I would start first, and ensure that they know what to do, how to do it, and when to act. Also, I would send them to what I call jail training through post. They would go through training through post to be jail certified, to ensure everyone is on the same path.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this question comes from our in-person audience, and The only thing we ask is that when you write legibly so that it can be read, and we'll do our best to ask the question. This question is for for Ms. Farmer. In 2010, inmate Glasso, a mentally ill inmate, was beaten to death by jail staff. Deputies went to prison. You worked in the jail. Why should we trust you since you are a part of the culture?
Okay, first of all, I'm not part of the culture. The inmate that they're speaking of, I'm unaware of that because he wasn't on my floor. I don't know anything about an inmate being beaten to death. The only thing that I remember in reference to individuals being indicted, the man was tased, and then they come to find out he had some type of drugs in his system. So he wasn't beaten to death. So I don't know anything about an inmate being beaten to death.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for that.
Thank you. This question will be for Mrs. Beasley. In 2019, there was a lawsuit filed against the former administration for the death of an inmate who was tased and shocked to death. I don't know if this is almost the same. This mistreatment of the inmates predates the incumbent. Why should voters vote for any former employee who worked in the jail? That's really the question. Why, knowing that these types of issues have happened, why should the voters vote for any former employee of the jail?
Well, I do believe that is possibly an ongoing investigation as to the guys or to the staff members who were charged in that case. However, in the event a situation like that happens under my watch, then we will have outside authorities to come in and conduct an investigation. And however the investigation leads, then that's what I would follow. I believe these staff members are currently on administrative leave, or they're currently at work pending the investigation. So as with any other law enforcement agencies, when something like that happens, you just have to simply abide by whatever policies and procedures and guidelines that you have in place and ensure that you follow those.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next question, and this is for Sheriff Labat. How do you plan to keep the new jail from being destroyed? It'll be larger and require more staff. If hiring staff is a challenge now, you don't have enough employees for the smaller jail. How will you manage going forward?
So again, thank you for the question. First of all, we've hired over 700 people in the last 2.5, 3 years. Again, retaining good talent becomes an issue. That's why ultimately we work with the Board of Commissioners to give our line team, our everybody, sergeants and below, a 36% pay raise, unheard of in law enforcement. We have to continue those incentives. We have to be able to focus on that. But equally as important is changing the culture. The building itself is being weaponized. You talk about shakedowns. We've brought in the state. We've brought in resources from around, not just the state, but the Metro Sheriff's area. And again, I am the candidate that took 1,500 homemade knives to the Board of Commissioners because the building itself, you're told when you're sheriff, the building doesn't belong to you. And so in this same vein, the actual maintenance belongs to what's called the Department of Real Estate and Asset Management. We spend $300,000 a month on maintenance. We're responsible for the work order process, and we've improved that process. But before you change how the focus of the building becomes, you have to change the culture. And the culture itself was one that was, look, they had something called Taser Tuesday when I took over. It didn't matter what happened, you were going to get tased on Tuesday. That was the previous administration's culture. We're focusing on how we treat people. We changed our mission statement to one word, and that's service.
Thank you, Sheriff Labat. This next question will be for Mr. Rambo. Mr. Rambo, how will you ensure that the Sheriff's Department builds and maintains community trust?
Well, thank you. I think that was kind of a trick question, is because it's not called a sheriff's department. It's called a sheriff's office. That was established essentially in 2005 when the new sheriff came in, and I had branded the fact that we need to be referred to as a office. I'm sorry, I got so caught up. I had to get that out. Will you repeat that last portion of the question?
So let me rephrase the question.
Yes.
How will you ensure that the sheriff's office builds and maintains community trust?
Thank you. And that is one of the tenets of the Constitutional Sheriff Initiative. You know, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, when your sheriff operates according to the duties, according to the law, you have a sheriff that is actually operating fundamentally according to what his job functions dictate towards community relations. That means that we are in the presence of our stakeholders. We're in the community, we're in the courts, we're inside of the jail. With inside of that, I want to ensure, backing into another question that was asked earlier about internal affairs processes, people want to know that at the end of the day, that there are going to be impartial investigations. And what I want to do is to ensure that I have a team that includes an instructor, an internal affairs investigator, as well as the supervisor that looks into all incidents, because at the end of the day, it affects my sovereign immunity, acting on behalf of the state to ensure that I provide that trust. So with that, that's my solution.
Thank you, Mr. Rambo.
The next question. This question is for Ms. Farmer. The elected term for the office of the sheriff of Fulton County is for 4 years with an unlimited term in office. Do you feel this elected position should have term limits? Example, the mayor of the city of Atlanta can only serve for 2 terms in office. Do you think again, or how do you feel about the sheriff having unlimited terms?
Well, the person that's in the position, in that seat, if they're doing what they supposed to do as the sheriff, and everything is in order, they're not spending up money, inmates are not dying, they're involved in the community, why not keep them in? So the 4 terms, that's fine, but if everything is in order, if that sheriff is doing a great job, I feel they should be there as long as their health allow them.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Farmer. This next question is for Mr. James J.T. Brown. Sir, how will you approach issues of racial profiling and discrimination in law enforcement?
That's a good question. I'm a training officer and I'm also a field training officer, and we teach what's called bias-based training. So we make sure that the officers do not discriminate against one particular demographic or ethnic culture when they're out there on the street. So it's going to be through bias-based training that I would train all my officers to ensure that they do not break anyone's constitutional law.
Thank you, sir.
So the next question, this is for Ms. Beasley. There are 800 sworn-in officers, 275 civilians in the county service. What experience do you have for managing a staff of that size?
I have an experience of 4 years, having done that already. I have managed the jail that staffed over 600 employees. I've managed the jail that housed over 3,000 detainees, people who reside there. I was responsible for not just those people, but any and everybody else that entered that facility, whether they were visitors or other contractors, people who do other type jobs in there. So I've done that. I've been there and I've done that, having managed the jail. So I am quite capable of managing the entire sheriff's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question is for the sheriff. This comes from our in-person audience. Inmates are still dying under your watch. What makes you qualified to continue to be sheriff of Fulton County?
So first, and again, thank you. For anyone to believe that no one will die while in custody is a misnomer. Ultimately, we have a more violent population, unlike 30 years ago when some of the individuals here were there. We have a decrepit building. Detainees are weaponizing the building. We have more people with chronic conditions. And equally as important is the fact that the mental health population, when I mentioned that we had 2,700 3,700 individuals. At the height of COVID, 1,900 of those individuals had mental health issues and concerns. The jails have become the mental health institutions around the country. If you look at the state of Georgia, ultimately there were 237 deaths there in the state prison. It is something that has happened because, again, the building has outlived its life cycle. We have a youthful population who actually have no respect. It's a badge of honor to come to jail, and to be able to weaponize the building and use it to attack each other. And again, we're operating with the largest gang trial ever in the state, and to have as multiple gangs inside the facility, the trend has become to have these actual gangs are now attacking each other internal to that. We have to be able to improve the building itself and focus on as we move forward.
Thank you for your response. The next question is for Mr. Rambo. What new technology are you considering using to improve jail security for staff as well as the inmates?
Thank you again for that question. Yes, I do believe in technology, but technology can never replace the manpower that you need to perform law enforcement, court, jail duties. With that, we can upgrade into apps and everything, but what the Constitutional Sheriff Initiative introduces is a rebranded training, first and foremost, holistically, of getting the human component together. We've got to instill constitutional competence in them to be able to operate the technology. When I introduced a program called CompStat that is on the records inside of the federal courts of having turned around jail operations in less than 6 months of it being implemented, I only used, and for those of you all who are there that were watch commanders, you remember the only thing we had was spreadsheets and a little small computer, and it turned around the jail towards 95 to 97% compliance ratings in all 15 areas. So yes, I do believe in technology, but I believe in upbuilding the organizational culture first. We can then go out and look at all the finest gadgetry that is out there, but I need to invest inside of competence in the first 365 days of taking office.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Rambo. This question is for Mr. James J.T. Brown. Sir, what is your opinion on the use of force?
Well, sir, the use of force should never be used unless necessary. When I was in the warrant division, which was executing warrants, we used every means possible not to use too much excess force. If you look at my training record today, I arrested probably over 1,000 individuals while I was in the warrant division, and never have I got a complaint on excessive force or abuse anyone. So back to training, we make sure that the officers do what I say is verbal judo first, and if they have to escalate, we make sure that they know how to use every tool on their belt, starting from handcuffs to pepper spray to aspartame and also a taser. I had one case where we went out for a mentally challenged individual, and we could have used the force necessary to really stop the threat, but we didn't. The mother was there outside. We tore up the whole house, but a week later, the mother sent to the sheriff's office a letter stating how we executed with sympathy for her son. So that's what I would teach my officers as the sheriff of Fulton County. First, be sympathetic, and then if you have to use force necessary,
Thank
do it.
you.
Thank you.
So the next question is for Ms. Farmer. Per the open record, and this is from the in-person audience as well. So per the open record request, in 2009 through 2019, under the previous sheriff, over 60 inmates died. 2 were drugs and 1 alcohol, 20 for suicide, due to suicide, 3 homicide, 35 due to mental health illness. Why should the residents trust a change in leadership when inmates died under the previous sheriff's watch?
Okay, the reason why I should be, what would make me different is because there is a difference between natural causes as death or suicide versus what's going on now. The cases that are going on now, those has been classified as homicide. So what I would do is to make sure that each officer is properly trained to conduct the security round that is supposed to be conducted. They're not conducting security rounds. There's not enough help. He hired 750, but 700 of them left. I get calls of how many they are working extremely long hours, 12 hours, overtime, double time. I've never heard of that, double time, overtime. But as to ensure that the inmates are safe, the deaf, they're going to conduct their security round to make sure everyone is okay.
Thank you so very much. This question again is from our audience and is specifically for you, Sheriff Labat. There have been millions of dollars mismanaged. Can we trust you when you continue to mismanage funds? Example, $200,000 Sprinter van on an AMX card that didn't go to have bidding. I'm assuming is what it says. Yes. What happened is the question.
Yeah. So first of all, there's zero mismanagement. Every dime that has been spent on the sheriff's office employees. And while we have it, let me teach what double time is. When you do overtime, you get time and a half. We fought for our employees to get twice that. So they actually made more money, and in a shorter period of time. So we work with our Board of Commissioners to make sure that's what double time is, that they were able to earn more money. When you focus on the items that were bought, each and every item was bought and purchased for the sheriff's office. We didn't have a command bus. We didn't have, matter of fact, the first vehicle, Pastor Joe, that was assigned to me broke down on Cascade. Life cycles of cars have still to this day, because of the way the county operates, still actually has us in a vulnerable situation. We didn't have proper equipment. We were still getting $600 for uniforms when we came into the office. Don't worry about expansion or interest. Don't worry about inflation. We were actually ill-equipped. And the officer said, this is what I want. And so to be direct, we took a poll. We took a survey of what hours do you want to work? 12 hours was the key, because we have to keep young people engaged as well. And we will live on technology as we continue forward.
Thank you so very much, Sheriff Labat. This next question, in truth, is for all candidates. And so this will be the only time that you all will have the exact same question. And so I'll start with you, Ms. Beasley. Let's address the real reason for increased crimes instead of building bigger jails. What would you, or what could or would you do differently than what's being done now?
One thing that I would do to address crime instead of building bigger jails, I would get out in front of it, working with the community, working with law enforcement agencies, working with churches, and then everybody who wants to aid in creating a village to keep people from coming into the jail. I would like to see a diversion center built so that people who deal with mental illness don't come to a jail. People who are homeless are not brought to a jail. So those are some of the things that I would like to see happen, as opposed to building a jail. Help the people who need help to keep them from coming there, and that will lessen the number of people and keep down jail overcrowding.
Thank you so very much. Ms. Farmer, same question to you. I'm sorry. The statement is, let's address the real reasons of increased crime. Instead of building bigger jails, what would you or what could you do differently? How will you address not only that, well, let me back up. What would you do differently?
What I would do differently instead of investing in a new jail is invest in a building to allow residents within Fulton County to come in and receive skills. I will partner with different organizations to give skills to residents of Fulton County. So that's by being out educating the community in ways of preventing crime. That would prevent them from coming to jail. And what was the other part?
Just what would you do different?
Oh, that's what I would do. Get involved with the community. Instead of building that jail, build a facility and have different professions to come in with their skills in order to train the individual that from the community to come in.
Thank you so very much. I will ask Mr. Brown, same question. With the increased crime, instead of building bigger jails, what would you do differently?
That's a good question, and I've been waiting a long time to answer it, and I have the answer. Like I stated, I've been a deputy sheriff since 1986. I worked under 6 sheriffs. I was the first one to become a crisis intervention officer with the sheriff's office. After I graduated, this article came out in the paper stating where crime lives in Atlanta and in Fulton County. The most incarcerated area of incarcerated people came from the zip code 30318. This was the article. I went to our chief, which was under the sheriff then. I said, let's start a crisis intervention precinct where we can go to these depleted neighborhoods and come up with programs for the youth, for the detainees when they get out, and just have programs for them so they won't enter back into the system. And we could cut down on recidivism. We can cut down on illiteracy, kids not reading, because most of the kids that I ever arrested in juvenile stated they couldn't read, so they dropped out of school. So I'm glad this question was answered. I have a plan for it, which is the crisis intervention precincts. And on the other side, when the detainee gets out, it's going to be a community transition center for them to come to so they can get help, hope, and training.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you. The same question will now go to Mr. Rambo.
Thank you very much. The word is already out on the streets, ladies and gentlemen, is because of the fact that Charles Rambo, honestly, is the public policy expert on Office of Sheriff functions. So much to the point that even the criminal element is saying, man, we need you back. Everywhere I go throughout the county, from south to north, hey, we remember you. Watch this. So that's the first sign is that one thing I'll do differently is you won't have to see my name on the side of vehicles, badges, patches, or anything else to be able to make a statement. The name is already established that wherever leadership is present, everything in that atmosphere begins to change. The key thing behind that is when you straighten out that jail, you will set the tone for the criminal justice system as we did in 2009 through 2016 in terms of making inmates and everyone throughout the state prison system understand there's a new sheriff in town. His name is Charles Rambo, and things are really getting ready to change.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Rambo. Sheriff Labat.
Well, while everybody wants to tell you what they will do, let me tell you what we've done. Every other Friday, we partner with a different elementary school because the school to prison pipeline is a real conversation to be had. And it starts below the 3rd grade level. And so you have real deputies out there escorting our young folks, if you will, as my mom would say, to their classroom. So their first interaction with law enforcement is not a negative interaction. When we took office as an administration, there were 18,000 warrants that needed to be executed. That means that a judge has signed and said that many bad actors are in our midst. And to this date, we work on reducing what that looks like. When we took over, there were 3,700 individuals that were charged with heinous crimes. We have the Spa shooter, the Midtown Medical shooter, the young lady that got in an Uber after shooting up Colony Square. So this notion that misdemeanors are there, we have 146. So to that, we have partnered with PAD, the Pre-Arrest Diversion Center. We've created spaces for the DA to protect those individuals and get them out. And then we have to leverage technology as we continue to move forward. This notion that 3,700 individuals, when we walked in over 1,200 days ago, that means that 3,700 potential victims. And as the chief law enforcement officer, it is our job to help protect our community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So the next question, Ms. Farmer, how will mental illness be addressed instead of incarceration?
The way I would have that addressed, with the officer being properly trained to be able to identify someone that is having a mental health crisis versus actually committing a crime. Mental health is not a crime, it's an illness, and we should treat it as such. So therefore, in order to prevent them from coming to jail, we will have to do what they call, for the ones that don't know, a 1013. If they're having a crisis, they need to go to the hospital. But if they should end up at the jail, everyone would be properly screened and not housed in general population as what's going on now. They're just putting everybody together, all the gang members together. That's why people are dying. So they will be classified and separated. The mental health will be in their own unit. That way they can get the treatment that they need in case they are incarcerated. And once they're released, the treatment can possibly continue while they're, after they are released. But while they're in custody, they will be separated, not in general population with everyone else. That way they can continue to receive the treatment that they need.
Thank you so very much. Sheriff Labat, I'd like to know, will you share with us your current policy on interacting with ICE or federal immigration authorities?
That's a great question. And we are not a 287G program. We won't be a 287G program. What we have done is partnered with ICE, met with them, and made the commitment. When you show us and bring us a criminal warrant, we will hold that individual. We will not hold that individual on an administrative warrant. And that warrant itself has to be violent in nature. And so every day I get a call at 9 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and 4:30 in the morning. And part of that conversation is, do we have anybody that is an ICE detainee? And what are they charged with? The last 2 ICE detainees were charged with aggravated assault and 1 charged with aggravated battery. So we are focusing on making sure if you're charged with no driver's license, we're letting you go. It's as simple as that. We will never be under my leadership, we'll never be a 287G program. And it is important to note, though, ultimately, when it comes to mental health, we already house mental health detainees by themselves. We have a step down program, and we focus on that so that we can try and get people the help they need. No mental health is not a crime, but it does not excuse a mental health patient from committing a crime. And so the largest number, we have individuals been in jail for 14 years because of mental health, but they also charged with murder. So we have to focus on protecting our victims as well.
Thank you so very much for that answer.
This question is for Ms. Beasley. Over the past 5 years, confidence in law enforcement as a whole has dwindled during the nationwide community unrest. How do you expect to restore faith in law enforcement?
I will work to restore faith in law enforcement, number one, by getting out front, leading with integrity, accepting all responsibility for my agency, leading by example, meeting with community leaders, church leaders, neighborhood leaders, working with everybody to ensure transparency. Any questions they may have, address those, because as sheriff, I am responsible for the entire sheriff's office. I would have to answer all tough questions and not shift blame to others. So that's how I would address it, by being the sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. The next question is for
Mr. Rambo. I'll join in here. Thank you, Kathy. Mr. Rambo, I want to know, What steps will you take to ensure that the privacy and rights of citizens are respected?
It all again comes back to, I'm glad we're in the house of God, that his prophecy can speak directly into his program and platform of the Constitutional Sheriff Initiative. This is essentially, in the Christian church, we have the Bible. Inside of Islam, you have the Quran. Inside of the sheriff's office, you have the Constitution that must be followed. When you have followed those tenets from the First Amendment to the freedom of speech to Fourth Amendment, rights to to be safeguarded from unreasonable searches and seizure, to the Sixth Amendment, particular as we are facing right now, in the sheriff being the executive branch of government. He is a check and balance to the judicial, not coming in begging, but coming in and giving direction that we're going to start moving forward with some speedy trials, or else otherwise we're going to start doing some mass releases of persons. And that would also include even in the immigration stance. This isn't a shot directly at Sheriff Labat, but at the end of the day, with the ICE agreements, what have you, do Black kids on that floor who are charged with no driver's license, do Black kids on the floor who are charged with the same statuses as those who may come in that are undocumented get the same opportunities for quick release? So watch this. At the end of the day, we're going to ensure under the 14th Amendment that you have equal access to the law.
Thank you, Mr. Rambo.
The next question is for Mr. Brown. Says, according to the economic reporting, the economy is better, unemployment is at an all-time low, and unfortunately, crime in Fulton County is at an all-time high. What do you see as the major causes for the increase in crime?
Social economic conditions. So if we provide work programs for individuals, we would see a decrease in crime. In certain areas where it's deprived, you need work study programs where they can come in, they can go to work, and they also can go to school. Because like I know, when you go to school, you increase your earning potential. So as the sheriff for Fulton County, and me being a Morehouse graduate, I would partner up with the colleges and try to ensure that some of the locals around in the bad areas that I talked about, in the bad neighborhoods, can get some school education and training. We have a good workforce development program with the city of Atlanta. I will partner up with them with my crisis intervention precincts. And that's what that's all about. I want to bridge the gap between the community, between the detainees, and the sheriff's office. So bridging the gap in the community is providing them services at that crisis intervention center, where they can come through faith-based organizations, local government organizations, and private organizations to get training. So they will not have what I call, and sociologists call, a social death. That's when a group of people are forgot about, and like the detainees at the Fulton County Jail at this time, a social
Thank
death.
you so very much, Mr. Brown. This question is for Ms. Beasley. Ms. Beasley, after opening your smoothie business, it has been reported or been heard that there was an investigation for selling smoothies to the staff employees to benefit your smoothie business on a daily basis. Is this true?
That's a very quick answer. That is not true.
Thank you so very much.
I have another question from our in-person audience, and this is for Sheriff Labat. Please explain why the Talatrex company received over $2.1 million and only 10 bracelets were issued to inmates. How much money did you receive from the deal?
So first of all, I don't know who decided that I received any money, but that would be zero. Secondly, again, we have to leverage technology. The deal itself was for 500 bracelets with an additional 500 that ultimately, for battery life, would really, much like a smartwatch, monitor individuals' heart rates, especially if there were some chronic conditions. And the actual technology works. The tech works. So there's news story after news story about it being cutting edge and actually being in a space that we can save lives. It is the reverse of an ankle monitor. It is the ability for us to predict if a person is having a heart problem. And so to that extent, there are a couple of things that we need to talk about when we talk about leveraging technology. When we came in as an administration and we talk about transparency, only 60% of the individuals had body cameras. Now 100% of the individuals and the officers wear body cameras. To a previous candidate's statement about letting people go. When we came in the door, there were 547 people charged with murder. There were another 1,100 people charged with aggravated assault. Before we started letting people go, we recreated an inmate advocacy unit so that we went through thousands and thousands of records. And just this past weekend, we found 4 people with $100 bonds, and we let those individuals go. So your sheriff's office is one of the premier sheriff's offices in the country, and we're doing our job.
Thank you so very much. I just real quick, I have a follow-up question for that. How many did you say there were 4 individuals?
There were 4 individuals that we went through.
And can I ask you, how long had they been there? Those 4.
And so let me say, don't know, right? Because we did find that one individual had come from court. And so again, leveraging technology, we have a poor technological infrastructure in the county, hence the latest cyber attack. And when we started cleaning those up and being very specific about that, it gave us an opportunity to figure out what that looks like. Ultimately, it's worth noting that the judges do a step down program. So when you go to court, your bond may be $15,000. When you stay there X amount of days, it goes down to 10 or 5, so on and so forth. But again, when we found those cases, we let people go.
Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sheriff Labat. This next question is for Ms. Farmer. Ms. Farmer, what will you do to ensure that the technology in the sheriff's offices is up to par?
What I would do to make sure that it's up to par, I will be partnering with different technology company that will make it easy, friendly for the employees. We don't need anything that make it difficult for them to do their job. Now, as far as these bands, you actually need a body to go around and conduct security rounds. They don't need a Fitbit. You need to place eyes on individuals to make sure that they're okay. So other than the technology, it would be easy, friendly for the officer to perform their jobs. Whatever that may be once we get into the facility. So it would be easy, friendly. We're not going to walk around with iPads. We're not going to do away with round books. We're not going to do away with stuff that we need to keep records. So that's what I will be doing, partnering with different companies and to ensure that it's easy, friendly, and each officer will be properly trained on how to operate it.
Thank you so very much.
This question is for Mr. Rambo. Fulton County law enforcement is required to enforce the law. Does the court system reflect support of the work of law enforcement efforts to reduce crime?
I heard that, but I want to make sure I give a very clear answer. Could you repeat that for me one more time?
Fulton County law enforcement is required to enforce the law. Does the court system reflect support of the work of law enforcement efforts to reduce crime?
I have to reverse that. Is because I am a expert on constitutional law and governance, particularly in speedy trial preparations, advanced report writing, processing crime scenes. And what I teach inside of that in mock trials is that the criminal justice system doesn't begin in the courtroom. The criminal justice system begins with the first call to the service. So with that, whether you are a police officer, a deputy or state trooper, proper preparation of paperwork from your incident report to your chain of custody is what helps the state to make a very sound and safe case. I would hate to just say it, but that's why our criminal justice system is bagged up, because we have too many questionable cases that continue to get languished and linger for time after time. I'm not telling you something I'm manufacturing. I'm telling you from actually working in the jail and working around inmates from the maximum security to general population. Hey, LT, listen, man, at the end of the day, I don't mind taking responsibility for what I did. I don't have a problem with taking responsibility and doing the time for what, but they're not going to stack the crap that they are trying to put on me down at the courthouse. That's according to what Louis Brandeis said in one of his court decisions. The government cannot commit crimes in order to secure conviction against a private person. It would create anarchy.
Thank you. We're moving right along, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so very much for your patience. This next question is for Mr. Brown. What are your top 3 priorities as Fulton County Sheriff?
My top priorities right now, since the Fulton County Sheriff's Office is in a crisis, is called the 3D plan: the death, the dollars, and diversion. On the deaths, I'm going to ensure that no negligent deaths happen because of our negligence. And that's through policy and procedure, training my staff how to execute properly on the floors. Accountability, as I stated, for the management, supervisors, and deputies. The next is going to be dollars. I'm going to be a watchdog over your tax dollars to ensure that they're not spent improperly on a vehicle that it should be a command vehicle, but it's not, and having names also on the vehicles. Next is my diversion, which is very important. I already talked to you about that, which was the crisis intervention precincts, where I'm going to bridge the gap between the detainees, the community, and the sheriff's office. So that's how I'm going to combat that.
Thank you so very much, sir.
So I'm going to ask the sheriff, what are your top 3 priorities?
Thank you. First, we have to focus on recruitment and retention. We have to focus on the jail as it exists. So we created a jail blitz project to rehab. Doesn't matter if we get a replacement facility anytime soon. Ultimately, we still have to replace decades old, the infrastructure itself. And we're going to continue to focus on fighting crime. We've gotten the top 25, the most wanted individuals in our county, off of the street because we created a fugitive apprehension unit. And for anybody to sit here and say that we will not leverage technology, they're stuck 30 years in the past. We've already met with Amazon. We've met with Microsoft. You have, for instance, Cobb County, they're exploring robots. How do we focus on creating an environment that gets us more information faster? And as we continue to educate our community, there is a court order that says you will, in fact, have a counting system that will move away from log books and paper. You will have technology that will be iPad worthy, and that you will bring yourselves into this century alone to be able to focus on being able to get rapid information to produce the data that the judges want across the board. So those priorities in and of themselves, fighting crime, focusing on retention, focusing on our building, we have to.
Thank you so very much, Sheriff. This next question is for Ms. Beasley. Ms. Beasley, I want to know, how do you plan to foster a culture of continuous learning and professional development in the department?
I plan to foster a continuous development of training in the department by ensuring that the staff go to training each year and learn about things that as technology changes. When it comes to crime, we have to do things to become smarter than the people committing crimes. And so we have to ensure that we have the training tools in place to make the staff better, so that we'll be a step ahead, a step ahead of what is coming. So training is how I would do that, ensuring that we get the staff properly trained.
Thank you so very much. The next question will be for Mr. Rambo. Mr. Rambo, what are your views on collaboration with other law enforcement agencies?
My views on collaboration with other law enforcement agencies first begins with inside, that we build the competence level of the sheriff's office that is the chief law enforcement officer of Fulton County. With inside of that, there's case law that says it is the inherent duty and right of the sheriff to determine the public safety needs. So at the end of the day, this isn't competition, but there is what is called the chief law enforcement officer that should be providing direction to the municipalities with inside of his county, that wherever his leadership is present, all things begin to change. That's one of the reasons why you have so many policing agencies that seek to become de jure deputy sheriffs, because they want to operate under the great authority and power of the sheriff and not the other way around. So with inside of that, when you work and collaborate with the sheriff's office, you have to work under our training, policy, and supervisory guidance. Why? Because what you are actually asking for is for something that you don't enjoy under your employment, and that is sovereign immunity. That wherever the sheriff performs his duties constitutionally correct, there is no lawsuits. There is nothing that you can bring against the sheriff because he performed the duties properly. So that's the leadership that I want to provide in collaboration, that when you want to get that type of deputization from the sheriff's office, you have to follow things specifically constitutionally.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Rambo. This next question is for Mr. How do you plan to address staff morale and retention within the department?
That's a good question. First, I'm going to have to rebrand the whole sheriff's office, because no one wants to work at the sheriff's office right now, because it is known as one of the most notorious jails in the world. BBC reported that. So who would want to come here and work there? So it's going to start with me, the leader. Also, with the rebranding, I'm going to have a strong marketing department that's going to come in and market with my vision of the sheriff's office, that we're helping communities. We're helping the afflicted out there. We're going to be making a spiritual change at the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. It has to be changed spiritually. Back in the day, we used to have prayer sessions. We used to have a choir. We used to have programs where we give flowers to deputies who were sick. So I'm gonna have to bring that culture back where we care about each other, and a culture where people can see that the Fulton County Sheriff's Office is more about caring and service to the community and to the detainees that we have in custody. We were caretakers when I was there. I don't know where that went, but I can tell you right now, in '86, when I started under all the sheriffs, we were caretakers and caregivers, and we have to give back to the community, and we have to take care of each and every detainee that's in there, because they may not be guilty.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. So the next question is for Ms. Beasley. As the next Fulton County Sheriff, if elected, law enforcement of the would fall directly under your leadership. What areas of communication need to be improved to eliminate unfortunate opportunities such as deaths, incarceration, mistreatment, and overall poor conditions, and encounters with staff? How would you handle that?
I think I heard you say law enforcement division, ma'am,
Yes.
but then it led back to deaths and some other stuff.
How would you deal with incarceration, with the deaths, mistreatment, the overall poor encounters, and those negative things of,
Okay.
being caused by staff?
Okay, so first of all, let's start at the beginning. When an arrestee is brought to the jail, a couple of things I want to have in place. I want to have staff to receive them. I want to have a expert to deal with mental illness, to someone who can evaluate those people who suffer from mental illness, so they can be properly classified by our classification staff, so they can be housed properly. For the staff that'll be working in law enforcement, we'll make sure that they are unbiased when they come in contact with anybody that they are making an arrest. Treat everybody the same. And then another pet peeve of mine is that treat everybody fair inside of the sheriff's office. But one thing that I truly want to bring back to the sheriff's office is people having a go-get-it type attitude, because we are a little bit lax in getting people released from custody. and serving as we should. So the sheriff says that his vision is service. So that's something that I definitely want to do, reincorporate true service.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next question is, I'm going to go back to Mr. Rambo. What's your 90-day, within the first 90 days, what are your priorities?
Well, thank you very much for that question. You can go to my website, www.sendandrambo24.us, and you will see 5 priorities, but I'm going to try to keep it specific to be fair to 3. The first thing that we're going to ensure is transparency. We've got to establish an Office of Sheriff Budget and Management, because there's so much conflicting information coming back and forward about how the budget is being mismanaged. Now, that's not Charles Rambo making that up. You can look at Fulton County Government TV and see the unhealthy exchanges about finances of what's going on there. We're going to ensure that we marry up our operations with our budget to ensure that you are getting the line delivery of services. Number 2, we're going to come in and establish accountability by reintroducing CompStat. CompStat is what brought us through a major federal consent decree, and that is the operation that will be used in our control meetings, that commanders will be held 100% accountable for day-to-day operations. But the third and most important thing, and it's not a very widely received word, and that's competence. We've got to rebuild constitutional competence in a new generation of leaders, to prepare them to move forward, that this sheriff's office will go well beyond my administration. So with that, those are the first 3 priorities in 90 days that will be established.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rambo. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know that both Kathy and I have been very strategic in ensuring that we give each of the candidates the same amount of questions. With that being said, we have been giving each candidate has been asked 8 questions, and the 8th and final question will go to Mr. J.T. Brown. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like they were slighted. Everybody was given 8 questions, and the 8th question, final question, will go to Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown, I have this question: how will you engage with schools and educational institutions for safety and awareness programs?
Well, I would start the gang resistance program, keep that in effect. Also, like I stated, the literacy programs, because I want to ensure that every kid in Fulton County can read. So the Fulton County budget, we can allocate funds to help achieve that goal. So with reading, with ensuring our crisis intervention precincts where the kids can come and get resources there.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard from 5, that is, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 qualified candidates vying to serve as the next Fulton County Sheriff. The elected sheriff will serve a 4-year term that begins on January 2025 and ends December 2028. Their future lies in your hands. As a constituent and voter of Fulton County, it is our hope that you will use your vote as your voice to elect fair representation. I want to give out these dates. The following dates are important, as we want you to understand that your vote counts and your vote is important. Ladies and gentlemen, early voting has already begun, but it will go on until May 17th. Primary election is May 21st. The primary runoff election is June 18th. Early voting in person begins October 15th through November 1st. October 25th is the last day to request an absentee ballot. October's 19th, 20th, 26th, and 27th are Saturday and Sunday voting. November 5th is the general election, and December 3rd will be the general election runoff if necessary.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to move into the closing statements of each of the candidates. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to share their closing statement. And again, if they go beyond their 2 minutes, they will be interrupted and asked to stop. We are going to start with our incumbent, the sheriff, and then we will go in alphabetical order by last name for each of the candidates. So, Sheriff, you have 2 minutes to share your closing statement and to share with the audience your platform, how you want to be contacted, donations, volunteers, whatever it is you'd like for them to know.
So first, again, thank you. Thank you for doing a wonderful job moderating. Thank you for the shepherd of this house, and certainly to me, thank you for your service to our community. The choice is clear. There's one person that has 5 major endorsements throughout all the unions, whether it be ASME, AFL, CIO. There's one person that has really begun to turn the ship around. That is Fulton County. Keep in mind, prior to, the one thing that one of the candidates was absolutely correct about is that in 2010, it was called the worst jail in the country. Matter of fact, it was deemed by my predecessor as Jurassic Park. And so when you treat people as though they're in a zoo, that is what you get. And so we have turned the culture and started turning the culture around and focusing on that. We talked about who we would partner with. We've already begun to partner with the Southern Company, with Georgia Power, trying to get out of the Fortune 500 companies the best training that there is. We've also started to create a program that is a co-responder program that focuses on mental health. How do we focus on those that we continue to serve? So I'm from here. I'm the only candidate from here. From Frederick Douglass High School to Clark Atlanta University. It is a time that we continue to focus. We continue to partner with our Board of Commissioners. We continue, look, you can always have a situation, we can agree to disagree, but there is opportunity for us to get this right. And so I'm asking that you go to Labat 2024, look at my platform, look at the website. I'm asking for your prayers and for your votes. Early voting's already started. We need you to continue to focus on what Fulton County looks like, and I need your help to continue to focus on fighting for Fulton County.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Beasley, 2-minute closing statement.
I am Kirt Beasley, and I will be your next sheriff. As I stated earlier, I have been responsible for more than 3,000 people daily on any given day. I have managed a multi-million-dollar budget. I am a successful Smoothie King business owner. I have saved the taxpayers of Fulton County millions of dollars, spearheading the inmate advocacy unit referenced by the sheriff that they continue to use that blueprint. I am fiscally and financially sound. I have job knowledge of every division within the sheriff's office. I've sat at the table with other executive commanders where we discuss strategic planning and goals to propel the Fulton County Sheriff's Office forward. I've worked with the justice partners, law enforcement agencies, and other stakeholders on reducing crime, reducing jail population, reducing recidivism, bringing awareness to mental illness, and other things. I am ready day one to restore integrity to the sheriff's office and regain control of the jail. That's a very powerful word, whether it's a new jail or the current jail. Without control, we're going to have problems. So a new jail will not fix the current problems that we are having and that we are seeing. We need management. We need good leadership. I am that person. I have worn the shoes of my opponents, but they have not worn mine. And I'm coming after Sheriff Labat's shoes next. I want to be your next sheriff. Vote Kirt Beasley, Fulton County Sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Beasley. So next we'll ask Mr. Brown for his 2-minute closing statement. And again, your website, volunteer signs, whatever you'd like the voters to know.
Well, thank everyone for coming out to hear this most important conversation from the candidates. I am James J.T. Brown, and I am by far the most qualified candidate up here. As I stated, I started in 1986. Rambo was asked a question about working the courts. I worked the courts. I was there when the Brian Nichols incident happened. I responded. I was a hostage negotiator in the warrant division where I actually took out, well, not took out, but helped a young man come out of harm's way because he was about to kill his girlfriend. I was the first crisis intervention officer with the sheriff's office, where I learned to work with the mentally challenged. Also, I worked in the extradition unit where I got the chance to go around the United States to every jail in the country 3 or 4 times to see how they operated. I'm a member of the community where I've been serving in the community for years. feeding the homeless, taking people to where they needed to go, helping people at the hospice hospital. I volunteered there. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, where I helped volunteer there to bring literacy to people for voting and children in programs so they could stay in school. I'm just a pillar of the community, and I want to bridge the gap between the sheriff's office and the detainees at the jail. I was out there in the streets, and it's nothing like to hear somebody when you go to their house who's afflicted and you want to do something about it. I went in many homes in Fulton County where you had afflicted people who just needed help. So I want to be that sheriff that's going to correct the crimes in Fulton County through task force that I worked on, and also the crimes that are in the jail. Vote for me,
Thank you,
James
Mr.
J.T.
Brown.
Brown.
Thank you. We will now go to Mrs. Farmer, and I have been saying your name all night, so I apologize. Mrs. Farmer.
Thank you. I know you all heard a lot tonight, but one main thing that you need to remember, if they can't be honest to themselves, don't expect for them to be honest to you. We can't continue to go on like this. We can't afford Sheriff Labat. His budget, $149 million. $36 million was also set aside just in case if 149 wasn't enough. Out of that 36, 20 million was used for outsource to get the inmates off the floor. Another 5 million was given to treat the incident with LaShawn Thompson, the one that was eaten alive by the bed bugs. But they doing their jobs, remember? That particular inmate had been there for weeks, if not months, before they find him. Now, the person that find him, she's doing her job. $10 million remains from that 36 was for repairs and renovation. I wonder how many locks we could have purchased if that van wasn't purchased. How many gallons of paint we could have purchased with that $200,000. So we're talking a total of $182 million just for the year, and the year hasn't ended yet. I am Joyce Farmer, and I'm ready to serve you as your next sheriff. I will be accountable. I will make sure that your tax dollars are not wasted. My website is electjoyce.us. Vote Joyce Farmer for sheriff, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Farmer. And ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, Mr. Rambo.
Thank you, Pastor. If you don't mind, I'm almost feeling like parenthetically pausing so that I can go ahead and preach this closeout. Put me in E flat organist. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not from here, but like Moses, he wasn't from Egypt, but he was sent on a mission. And when he got there, he found a condition that should have been better from the natives, that should have shown the city much better than what it was, and the county in terms of what it represents today. And that's the reason why today it was asked of Adam Clayton Powell in his famous speech, what's in your hand? What's in your hand? Because I can use what's in your hand. What's in my hand is the plan that was given to me. It's written according to Habakkuk, to write the plan and make it plain so that even a runner can follow it all the way through. 365 days is what I'm guaranteeing you, parenthetically pausing for God to move in and through this. Because as you said, Jim, place where you never worked at, 901 Rice Street, is in great much leadership. You might have worked at the courthouse, but you were not a part of the transformations. And by the way, 2010, you were never a part of the sheriff's office either. But 2020 is where we began to see plague after plague after plague. And I'm going to tell you, in this house of God, the plagues are going to continuously come down until you repent yourself and recognize where you have gone wrong. If you win the election, I am prayerful that you will repent and
Rambo,
turn
I
away.
worked at
directly.
1135 Jefferson Street, the
Sir.
jail there.
I
We're
never
not doing that.
interrupted,
Yes, sir.
and I need
not
to
doing
be able
that.
to
Yes, that's
speak.
the jail.
I need
Sir.
to be.
Well, I got a right to rebuttal. He said my name.
We're not-
Thank you.
I do believe he mentioned my name, and I only responded. May I?
If you want to continue, go.
Thank you, thank you. So from 2009 to 2016 is when real transformation took place. There was no pause in 2010. If you can show me that, in federal court records, I'll come back to the same environment where I made my statement and in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll drop out the race if you'll do the same.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Rambo.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard from all 5 of the candidates. All 5 have qualified to serve as the next Fulton County Sheriff. Now their future lies in your hands. This is for our in-person audience as well as our viewing audience online. And so before you go to the polls, make sure that you are an informed voter, that you know what is on the ballot, who is on the ballot, when to vote, and where to vote. We are all aware that the district lines have been redrawn. I encourage each of you to go to the Secretary of State's website and pull your sample ballots. Pull your precinct card to make sure that you are at, if not a new precinct, the correct precinct. And that you know by pulling that sample ballot, which of these candidates is on your ballot. And they should all be on your ballot. They're all running for Fulton County. This is the largest county in the state. So each is seeking to govern this large county, but we want to make sure that we elect the most qualified public servant to serve you over the next 4 years to govern and develop policy in this great county. So again, I say, I want to leave you with this. Know who is on your ballot, know what is on your ballot, know when to vote, and know where to vote. But more so than anything, exercise your right to vote. I'd like to turn this forum back over to our host for this evening, Ms. Damita Chatman.
Thank you, guys. I want to thank the residents of Georgia. I want to thank the candidates. I want to thank the shepherd of this house. And I want to give knowledge that we have elected official in Councilwoman Helen Willis in the audience. Let me say this. Anything that go out the public, social media, if it's not done in decent and order, it don't reflect the candidates, it reflects me. So I'm very clear on the process. I want to thank the candidates. I know some candidates tried to contact me through email, through phone, through text, and I made it clear that I wasn't going to do any talking to any candidates. Once I sent the email out, everything was going to go through email because I did not want anybody to say I said this or that. So if I want to thank the candidates for understanding that. I also put out an email to the candidates that since we're in this Pastor Chris house, I'm asking each candidate to leave a $20 or $25 donation to this church. Anything that's not covered, I'm covering it myself. Any monies, because I have to clear that up. Damita Chatman's not getting anything. I'm making sure that everything is covered. I want to thank my camera crew that stepped up. Again, I want to thank the shepherd of this house, and I want to thank my husband for being the backbone, and the moderator, Mrs. Kathy Adams, and Pastor J.D. Flint. Again, I want to thank you guys. This is not for me to take a side. It is give the community the right information. I want the candidates to stick around. We're going to take a picture with you guys. This will be the only picture that I'm going to take with you guys. And it's not an endorsement, but I'm going to take a picture of you and then we're going to get them out this weekend. I want to apologize that we didn't get the pictures out because I'm working, and when I leave here, I have to go to work. But again, I'm going to turn it over to this pastor of this house. Thank you for respecting this man's house. Thank you.
And thank you, Sister Chapman. Thank you, candidates, for that robust discussion. Thank you, citizens, for being a part of this gathering and forum on today. We're so thankful to be able to invite you in. You may drive by here and may not have ever saw and say, well, I didn't know something like that could be inside of that building. Somebody even may be wondering, even if it is a church there, but there is a church and God lives here. We're so thankful today on this National Day of Prayer, to be hosting this forum, and we thought it apropos for you to be aware of that back in 1952, both houses of Congress called the first Thursday of May of every year to be the National Day of Prayer. And so I tell those public officials, and I tell those elected officials, and I tell our school system officials, I remind them of the fact that it's okay to call us for prayer when there's issues going on. But we need to be praying every day in every way. We need to be reminded that the first book of issue in the United States was the Holy Bible. How's that working in this century? I begin to look at various denominations of money to see the thing that was consistent on each piece of money. And on each piece of money, it says, "In God we trust." Not just any God, but the God of the Holy Bible. And brothers and sisters, I understand the delineation between church and state as in law. I get all of that. I get all of that. God's umbrella is bigger than any man's umbrella. God's shovel is bigger than any man's shovel. It's very important for us to understand that our moral foundation must be set right. As Psalm 127, 1 and 2 says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, you labor in vain that build it. Unless the Lord keeps the city, the watchman watcheth, but in vain." And so I want to close out this time together this evening with prayer. I want to remind us today that this is a house of prayer. You're welcome to come at any time, not just for a forum. We got open space for you. We're ready to collaborate to make it happen. And let me just say this, not for this race, but for all the races. If you try to do it without God's church, it won't be done. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for even public officials throughout the centuries, throughout the decades, who have saw fit to set aside a day to call a nation to prayer. And even this evening, dear God, as these candidates for this particular office have come in robust dialogue and discussion, Father, we pray for each one that they will continue their public service. They won't be wrapped up by the title, but would do that which you have called them to do. Father, we pray for every family represented here. We pray for our children, even as they are doing testing and concluding school years. We pray for families. And Father, we pray against the violence. We pray against the crime, the schemes of man. And we claim the promise even of your word, that no weapon formed against us shall prosper when we walk in relationship with you. Thank you. Be with us as we depart from this place this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
We all want to take the pictures. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff. We're going to take a picture. Thank you. 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 Let's get these pictures.